actually. And now I'm so keen to see how we can grow this further and just take this to the next levels. So, for those of you who do remember, in the first episode, we spoke a lot about how to find your passion in the work that you do, because it really is, I think, so important. And we delved a little bit into that and how you can, have the mental mindset required to find something that you actually enjoy and that you can then monetize as well. But I thought for today's episode, it might be really, really good for us to talk a little bit about how to start shifting the mindset from I can't, or from that's not for me, or other people get those kinds of opportunities. That doesn't happen for people like myself. That's a lot of the negative self-talk that I hear a lot from my clients, from my friends. I've said those things in the past as well. How to shift that to one of curiosity and wonder. I
Mm,
wonder how I can make that mine. I wonder how I can appreciate and enjoy that experience. I wonder what it would feel like to have that level of success, right? And please note that even though we're talking about physical wealth here, a lot of the times when we are speaking about success or being wealthy or anything around those kinds of words, we're also talking about the mental mindset we have to have in order to get there. And it's not one of greed, because that's the other thing I get a lot. We'll talk about that in a second. I think that's going to be a very interesting little chat there. It's not about greed, it's about just knowing that there is enough for everyone. So it's not a case of if I have more, somebody else has to have less.
right.
So that's just one other thing that I wanted to kind of bring up, but we'll get into all of that in a second. And then lastly, we're actually going to have some practical steps that we can take depending on where everybody is in their own um, growth cycle when it comes to their personal self wealth, their
Mm,
personal self worth, right? Because it is different for different people. I know when I was in corporate investments for high net worth individuals, I was so deeply unhappy in my work, right? I was making a lot of money for a 27-year-old, but I hated almost every day of my life.
mm,
That's not high self wealth. That's not where things need to be. So I'm very keen to see how our audience starts to interact, because I know with some of my clients, they're coming from a place where they're more concerned about just putting food on the table. There
mm,
are other people who are going to be listening to this who maybe have stress around job security, which is something that the whole world is sort of going through at the moment. And then other people who are doing exceptionally well in their lives financially, maybe not happy as to where
mhm.
they are and looking for ways to shift that around. But since I'm not, yeah, sorry, Laura, yeah, I was
Yeah.
actually
Oh,
gonna move
no,
it
go
to
ahead.
you.
No, I'm so eager to hear. I've got like my pen and my paper and I'm taking notes. This is such a wonderful topic because it's something we all understand. No matter which end we're on, right? We have too much, we don't
Right.
have enough, or we have enough and we're miserable, or we're excelling in one area and not another. And money is one of those threadings that runs through the entire globe. The mindset of it, or the lack of it, or the inequity of it. There's so much to uncover here in this podcast as we move forward. I think this is just going to be just a great podcast to help on so many levels, whether you don't know a lot about financing, you're somewhere in the middle, or again, maybe you've had successes, but now you want to deepen the connection and start to really expand how that money can be used for the greater good, for yourself, your family, your community. There's a lot here to unfold.
There really is. So as you were saying that, something started to come in quite clearly as to something that I think we need to discuss right at the outset. Now, as any of our listeners know, when it comes to religion or faith, we are non-denominational in terms of what we put forward, even though we've both had our experiences with religion, organized religion, our own faith and our own beliefs, etc. But something I want to bring up, because I know a large percentage of our audience will have heard this, whether or not they are Christian, is money is the root of all evil. We've all heard that saying, right? It's been in movies, it's been the subject of different podcasts and books and literature, and the list goes on. And it starts off right in the outset of Christianity, because that quote is actually ascribed to Jesus Christ. Interestingly, though, he never said that. What he actually said was, the love of money is the root of all evil. For you
Right.
cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve God and money, for either you will hate the one and love the other, or despise the one and work for the other. Now, when I first heard that scripture as a child, I formed my own ideas around it. And I kind of saw it as, well, money has its place, but it should just be enough to cover the basics, because your work and your heart should all be aligned towards the divine.
Right.
When I got older and I started to research, because I love religions, actually, I love reading up the basis behind what is being said, the etymology of the wording, etc., so I can get a deeper understanding of all these wonderful different holy scriptures from various cultures spread all over the globe, because they often have singular threads of truth running through them all. And when I came back to this particular scripture in my studies, what was so interesting was, if you translate it the way it actually should be translated, which I get why they didn't, because it becomes very wordy, but that's the problem with Aramaic and Hebrew, is one sentence can have so many different implications. So you can actually deliver a lot of information in a very short space of time using those languages. So in English, what would actually happen, or what would have happened, is, if we'd had the full translation, is essentially what Jesus was trying to say is, don't love money, because money is a tool. Do not serve money, because as humans, the only person we should serve is the divine, right? We should not be kneeling before anything else. We are autonomous creatures with free will. So why would you serve a tool to get from A to B? But then deeper than that is the fact that the language that was apparently used specifically around this discourse was not just money as, okay, this isn't money, but I'm holding up some cards. It's not paper. It wasn't coins. That was not what Jesus was talking about. The language that was actually used was the energy around it. And that's very interesting, because we often talk about the energy that wealth carries, the vibration that it carries. We never, and we often will say things like, money loves speed, wealth loves speed, right? Which seems to indicate that on some level, wealth has become, I won't say sentient, but definitely an energy that carries real power. Now, I bring all of that up because then, if you start to think about it in that way, if you think of wealth and money as an entity, not necessarily a sentient one, but a very strong, powerful energy, one that you should not serve, but that should serve you, your mind starts to open exponentially to what is available to you. Because now you're not working to get money. You are seeing money for what it is, which is a flow of energy that you can direct to achieve greater goals. Oh,
And
sorry, went down a rabbit hole there.
that's okay, but I was, again, as you were talking, the energy of money is is truly rooted into the thought of money. How do we
Yes.
think about money? If we think about it for evil, then that is the outcome of it. If we think about it for control, that is the outcome. If we think about
Correct.
it for good, goodness, compassion, giving. So it really isn't the money itself, as you said, it's because currency of wealth can be exchanged differently. It can be time, love, volunteerism, it can be knowledge. We look at the paper good, the coin of money, as somehow equating to look at me, look what I've accomplished, look at all I have. Now, again, we're always going to say this: luxury and wealth and abundance is our birthright. And however each
Yes.
individual wants to live out that experience, that is a beautiful thing. No one is saying anything. I could have $1 million and think I am worth 100 million. I could have $100 million and think, because of the way I feel, a million. It is all in the mindset of how you look at the money itself. What does it do for me? What is it leading me towards? How can I enjoy the process of abundance and still live a fulfilling life? And I think that's where this is
Mm.
all kind of getting entangled, and whether we bring it all the way back, right, to religion or to the experiences. I mean, most humans back in the day, when texts were written in that way, it was because the people that owned the money were kind of evil. they weren't
Right.
they weren't all about, hey, how can we, they put certain structures in place so people had places to go, but the work ethic and the drive, and it wasn't about expansion of mind. It was only for the
Mm.
select few. It is
Yes.
somewhat coded in our DNA that only that person over there can have that amount of wealth. Now we're seeing that shift, right, in our time. We're seeing wealth really spread across. But I want
Mm.
to say something, and I want to work on the articulation of this. How do people of great wealth become wealthy? What is it about the way they think and conduct their life that those that are less wealthy do not? What is that contrasting mechanism, that middle ground expressing to us? Wealth is for everyone, and again, it's subjective. Wealth could, for me, could mean living out in nature in a treehouse surrounded by butterflies. Wealth for
Right.
someone could be private jets and yachts and traveling the world. But why does one have it and the other doesn't? That's what I think the wealthy mindset is going to, not that I think, I know it's going to help us uncover, because it begins in the mind. How we look at wealth, how we value wealth, what does it mean to us? What are we connecting to it? And certainly, what are the limiting beliefs we have against creating wealth for ourselves?
Oh, okay. Now I'm excited. So you've asked some really deep and beautiful questions there, and I'm going to answer them from my personal experience and research and what I currently hold to be true. And then I'd love it if we can unpack it a little bit. But one of the books that everybody who decides, they maybe want to pack on a few zeros to their bank account, there's this one book that everybody reads or is told to read, even if they don't, and that is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's one of those books that everybody's heard about. Everybody says you have to read this book. It's going to change how you look at the world. And interestingly, I think I only read half of it and I skimmed the rest. I'm the kind of person who likes to skip to the end to understand the import of the book. But there were two main things that I got out of it, especially on the second time round. The one is obviously, if you envision it, if you really believe it is possible and that it is yours, the universe will provide. The second thing, though, and I can't remember if the book explicitly says this, or if this is just something that I kind of picked up from it by then also looking at other very wealthy people and how they got there, is there seems to be an almost direct correlation between the level of someone's wealth, physical wealth, I mean, as in zeros in their bank account, and how many lives they've impacted.
Hmm.
And case in point is, and I've brought this up before in some of our other podcasts and in our personal discussions as well. You know, one of the people whose lives I've not studied, but who I enjoy watching is Kim Kardashian.
Mhm.
Because obviously everybody says, well, she's only wealthy because of who her family was. Well, no, yes, they were upper middle class, but they were by no means massively wealthy.
Right.
Sure, she had a bit of a head start, but not huge. Then everybody said, oh, it was only because of her sex tape. And I look at it again, I'm like, well, that's also not true because lots of celebrities engaged in various forms of media manipulation at the time. Not all of them became as well known and by extension as wealthy as she did. And then I looked at it further and I went, for better or for worse, because I'm not going to get into the moral arguments as to whether or not our society should be learning from the Kardashians about how to live their lives.
Right.
But for better or for worse, they have impacted a very substantial part of the population. And as a result, you could actually see how their wealth increased.
Right.
Another case in point, Amazon. The reason why Jeff Bezos, actually on Facebook, let's look at Meta as well, and oh gosh, what is his name? The owner of Meta, or used to be Zuckerberg,
Right.
right? We can say whatever we want to say about them as people, about their business practices, etc. But the reason they got to billionaire status, if you boil it down, is because of how many lives they've impacted. There is not one place on the face of this planet, except that one island where no one has set foot for I don't know how many hundreds of years, where people do not know about Amazon and Facebook, and
Right.
probably the Kardashians as well, right?
Right.
Everybody knows about it, top to bottom,
Right.
even if it's just a concept that they know about. So, for instance, in South Africa, Amazon is not big here. We have a slightly different version of it, but there is not one single person that you can walk up to on the street and go, have you heard of a company called Amazon? Of course they have,
Right.
right? Ever bought anything off it? No, but their life has been impacted because they know about it. And I can
Right.
guarantee you, if Amazon ever launched here fully, everybody would adopt it,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. And I think these examples, and again, we really could have classrooms based on the study of the Kardashians and Amazon and Facebook, work ethic, personal judgment, integrity, where and how did they affect. But if you take the person out and look at the structure, the model structure, and the business
Exactly.
structure. That's what we're talking about. So this is another great opportunity to allow this podcast to expand your own mindset. So when we say the Kardashians, don't think about them in a show. Don't think about them in fashion. Don't think about all their drama and their life chaos. Think about it from the perspective of business.
Mm-hmm.
They have no blocks to wealth. They may have other blocks, right? Which we've seen. We're talking about
Yep.
wealth. The reflection mechanism of somewhere in their mindset that I deserve, I require, I want to create, I want to experience, and then they fill in the blanks and they just find from point A to point M and they figure out how to get there. Now, I'm not saying every move they make is correct, again, ethical. I'm not going to get into that conversation, but let's use them as an example, or a Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos. Let's look at these leader in the field of wealth. What are they doing that has allowed them to create wealth. Now, I know many people are going to be sitting here and saying, oh my goodness, I am a housekeeper, a waitress, a school teacher. I'm working at the local factory. I'm just barely getting by. My mind cannot even think of what that wealth would be. What we want to do is allow you to open up to what the mindset is, how to put that in place so that you can up level where you are in your present condition. So no matter where you are, okay, you don't need to jet set off to that side of the scale, but creating wealth, physical wealth, zeros added to the bank account, will also help you create wealth in all aspects of your life. That's
Mm.
what we're trying to express. You don't have to follow the way someone else did it if you don't necessarily agree with the way they did it. Remove the emotionality out of it and look at the business mindset to create more wealth for yourself.
So that actually now starts to really bring us quite neatly into the more practical aspects of this in terms of what we can do to start to shift our mindsets. Now, I brought this up in, I think it was our Wealth of Self podcast last week, but I'm going to actually go through the entire exercise with everybody today. And I recommend if you're listening to this and it's something that you are wanting to do in your own life, pause the podcast, go grab pen and paper, and actually do the exercise in real time here with us. I'm going to use the very first principle of Think and Grow Rich, which is imagine it, but imagine it in detail. So, an exercise that I would often do with my clients is I say, I want you to imagine that you're waking up in your perfect bedroom. And again, we've done this exercise in short on another podcast, but I'm actually going to go quite in depth with this one. So imagine you're waking up. I want you to actually physically feel what your bed linen feels like. Now, I don't know about everyone, but I know that every so now and then I've walked through we have a store here in South Africa called At Home. And every so now and then you walk through, it's kind of like a Bed Bath and Beyond. And you might just see a bed set that you really like and you touch it and it just feels so luxurious. And in the back of your head, you go, I really should maybe look at buying that one day. But I want you to not actually feel that that is your bed set. And then I want you to, as you're opening your eyes more, looking around your room, think about what your view looks like. Are you looking at a wall? Are you looking at art? Is there a TV in front of you? Do you have a view of the ocean, view of the mountains, a cityscape? What kind of view does your bedroom have? Is it looking out into your own garden? If it's your own garden, what does your garden look like? Is it a herb garden, a jungle type garden, a manicured lawns type garden? Really get detailed with what you are seeing and hearing. What are the noises? Is it birds? Is it waves? Is it a gentle rustle of leaves? Is it traffic? What are the sounds that you're hearing? What are the smells that you can breathe in as you're waking up on this perfect morning? And then as you're getting out of bed and you go to your bathroom, again, really take time to describe, what does your bathroom look like? If you have a partner, are you having separate sinks? Are you having separate bathrooms? Is it his and hers? What does it look like? Is there a shower? Is there a bath? What does the bath look like? It's interesting how detailed you can start to guess. What kind of mirror do you have on the wall? Do you have a cabinet up on the wall or down under the sink? Do you have both? Do you have heated towel racks? What are your bathroom mats looking like? Really start to feel the perfect ideas to what this bathroom looks like. And as you leave that and heading towards the kitchen, I always say, are you a tea or a coffee drinker in the mornings? What kind of kettle do you have? I did not know this, but there's a kettle. Well, I knew this a couple of years ago because one of my ex-bosses showed me. He bought this kettle that cost more than most people's salary in South Africa, actually. But as he says, he goes, I can afford it, and it does a task that I love because he doesn't like coffee, he likes tea. But because of how he studied teas throughout his life, he knows that different teas need to have water boiled or heated to a certain temperature, not necessarily boiled, because you might scald the tea leaves. So it has different buttons, one for green tea, one for Ceylon, one for chamomile, and you can heat the water to the perfect temperature for your cup of tea. And when I tell my clients this, they go, "Oh my goodness!" I'm like, "Right." So we always see the fancy coffee makers. Maybe you're a tea person. Maybe that's the kettle you want. And then I say, now as your day is starting, and we all do this, maybe checking your emails or looking at your calendar for your day. What does your day look like? Do you have a staff meeting? Do you have staff? Are people working for you? Or are you working for someone else? What kind of meetings are you having? Are they strategy meetings? Are they interviews? Are they meetings
Oops.
about creations that you are? What does your day consist of? Again, this is your perfect day. So this is a day that you are just loving everything. Everything is flowing perfectly and beautifully, and the work you're doing is just uplifting, right? Who's the first person you speak to? Is it your personal assistant? Is it just sending off a yes, that's fine email? How does that look and feel for you? Right? And interestingly, by the end of just this little exercise where we've only just started the day, and I used to actually use this not just to impress upon someone the fact that they could create their perfect life, but that they could choose the profession that they actually want to be in. Because it's so interesting that by the time you get to what does your day look like, and it's the first time we're talking about work, if I then said to someone, what is the profession you're in? They're able to tell me immediately. Whereas 10 minutes before, most people would be like, well, I don't know. I maybe want to do this or maybe I want to do that. I'm not entirely certain how that would look. Just giving ourselves the permission to, I'm not going to use the word imagine, magically create this perfect world in our minds allows us to get answers to questions that we were too scared to ask.
Right. And almost again the creation, the journeying through, when we take a moment and allow ourselves to be playful and to have that inner expression of what would really matter to us, what would make us happy, right down to the linens, to how we, take our first sip of tea or coffee, to what is the visual we're waking up to. So if we're living in the inner city and we're struggling, I'll use this as an example, and we go through that exercise as a client, you may see yourself looking out in the mountains or at the
Mm-hmm.
beach or at some
Mm-hmm.
beautiful garden. And now we begin to see the contrast and how can we move from, let's say, maybe the noise of the city to a more peaceful environment. This is the beginning of creating the wealthy mindset. And
Yep.
for so many people, they feel like, well, visualization or reading a book or meditating or looking at a business model, how is that going to move the needle? But this is the creation of a wealthy mindset, one step at a time, one discipline at a time, one exploration into the potential of what you can become. Nothing will happen magically in the sense of poof, here it is. We are in human physicality with a mind. Between the two, we are skilled and equipped to create whatever it is we can dream and build into creation. But there is work. Look at all the great pyramids, look at all the beautiful temples, look at all of our churches or just our buildings, look at our homes, look at and fill in the blank. It took ingenuity. It took a wealthy mindset, someone to design it, someone to engineer it. It took many points of skilled labor to put wealth in place. Do not let a block of fear or limitation get in the way
Mm,
of what Stefan is creating. This is an exploration into your personal experience of creating, maybe for the first time, or maybe revisiting it, what a wealthy mindset can do for you. And once you create that wealth, then what you can do for others, that's where the joy really lies.
oh, absolutely. Now, so I want to stress something that you brought out there, Laura, just in case our audience thought it was a throwaway, but it's really not. You touched on some deep wisdom there. These are incremental, small steps initially that we have to take. It's not you're going to move from the inner city to your ideal home in 24 hours flat. Okay. Realistically, the chances of that happening are very, 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 very slim. Okay. Not saying never, because that word doesn't really exist in my vocabulary, but it would take some doing.
Right.
Now, I got hit with that quite early on because I was chatting to a mentor of mine about manifestation and the lifestyle that I wanted to be leading. And funny enough, I'd done a very similar exercise to one that I just walked everyone through, except it was even more detailed. They then from there go, what when you're going through your day, where your office is, um, at night, where are you having dinner? Are you driven? Or do you driving your own car? What car is it? All of this kind of stuff that they really get deep into. And by the end of it, I looked at it and it looked so far removed from the life that I was leading at that point in time that I said to my mentor, but I can imagine this and I've done so in the past. Why am I not there? And he said to me, because Stefan, even though you can see it, and even though you're doing a lot of the right things, like making sure that being the sum of your closest five friends is who you are as a person. So I was trying to associate with people with a wealthy mindset. That was one of my big goals. He says, you're doing all the right things in that respect, but you personally have not experienced X. He says an X is 100 times removed from where you are right now. And therefore your soul goes, that's a lie, because your soul hasn't experienced it. It's outside of its realm of experience. Therefore, it finds it difficult to make that a reality for you. He says, but a 10x from where you are is well within the realm of possibility for you and your soul. Your subconscious mind can get there. Interestingly, that one of the things that came out in my studies as well is the reason why most religious organizations ask that you tithe is because the human mind can handle 10% of stress either way without having an issue, negative or positive, right?
Right.
Which is why people who win the lotto don't tend to be able to keep it. It's
Right.
too stressful for the mind, even though it's seen as a positive stress. Okay. So what he was saying, what my mentor was saying to me was, don't shift from zero to hero overnight. He says, just do 10%. He says, but now, once you've made that 10% shift and your mind hasn't completely wonked out because it's not stressful for it, now where you are is higher, if you had to have it on a scale or whatever, than where you were. Therefore, 10% of this new normal is a bigger step than the first step you took.
Right.
He says, now you can see that by the time you get to 40 times where you were, well, now that's why we see it as a snowball effect. He goes, but it's not. You're just each time taking 10% of your new self-worth, of your new mental state. And that is creating the illusion of a snowball effect. But that's exactly what you're just taking small incremental steps. And I just wanted to reinforce that for everyone, because that, I think, is where so many of us, myself included, tend to hit a bit of a wall, because we want it and we want it now.
we and in all honesty, the psychology of the mind could not handle it all, right? It
Oh,
really can't. In reality, very few people could have a windfall and do all the correct steps so it does
correct.
not affect them negatively. There is a reason why the mind is in place. Use it. It is a mechanism of creation. When you look at it in that way, you really are in the power position to create. Just don't think about the outcome, the end of the journey. That's what Stefan was just saying. You can't go from having $100 in your pocket to having a million in 5 minutes, let's just say, because, oh my God, what am I going to do? Enjoy the unfolding, enjoy the invest,
Mm,
enjoy the welcoming and openness to knowledge. Use it all so that in 1 year from now, 12 months will go by like that. Start to create a game plan as you listen to these podcasts, as you begin to explore what a wealthy mindset looks like. Just remind yourself it's like building a home. You don't just build a home, foundation and cement and 2x4s and insulation and sheetrock. And before the beauty of the interior of the home is completely in full view, where you can experience it, look at the work that goes to just building the walls and the roof alone. Everything has a
right.
process. And to try to speed up the outcome of investing, of building wealth, of creating a wealthy mindset, it's not going to happen. The It all has to come together in its natural unfolding. And you said something in one of our other podcasts, taking $50, taking $5, taking 15, whatever that number is, just slowly, even if it's $5 a week and you put it in an envelope. And at the end of the year or the end of 6 months, you'll have a little bit of money. Then you take that and then you invest it correctly. Small steps will lead to bigger results. Begin in the mind. You are of value. You have value. You are wealthy. You are in physicality. Right there, there is no price tag to put on being in the physical body with a mind. You have the potential to create worlds. You really do. It's the journey from where you are and what you put at that onset, which is what creates the unfolding of the journey.
Perfectly said. So perfectly said. I really do hope that for everyone who's listening today, that this has given you a deeper understanding as to what we're trying to create here with the Wealthy Mindset podcast. Today has been more about the initial practical steps that we can take mentally and emotionally to start to prepare ourselves for the opportunities to reveal themselves, because opportunities all around us constantly, literally constantly. It just takes a little bit for us to shift our perception to be able to see them. Now, in line with that, we are going to be having different guests every week on our podcast as well, who are going to be here to speak to us about entrepreneurship, about their own journey with side hustles. We're going to be talking to investment specialists who are going to be talking about how to take advantage of what can be a very scary world out there. Because let's face it, you turn on an episode of, okay, the one that springs to mind is the CNN show on investing called First Move with Julia Chatterley. I think it's every day around 10 a.m. Eastern time. And for someone who's studied finance, it all makes perfect sense. To the average Joe on the street, they may as well be speaking Greek.
Mm.
It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, right? We're hoping that through this podcast, we're going to be able to start to unveil some of that mystique, because it is actually really simple how all these things work once you understand the basic principles underneath them. Our other hope and prayer is that for each person who's listening to this gets to take away something in each episode that makes their lives a little bit better in how they look at the world around them and how they look at the opportunities that are in front of each and every one of us. And more importantly, how they start to look at their own dreams and hopes and aspirations as not just fantasies, but something that is a reality somewhere. It's just going to maybe take a bit of time for it to become a reality here.
And always just know this, even if you don't understand it at the moment, just hear this. Wealth is an alignment. That's all it is. Through the wealthy mindset, you will learn how to align with wealth. It is there. It's just finding and fine tuning your journey to align with what you want and then take the
Mhm.
steps there. Just remember, you already have an abundance of wealth. It's inside you. Allow again knowledge and podcast and information and guidance and mentorship to bring more awareness at how that unfolding to your wealth can be. And hopefully you will find it here with us.
With that being said, thank you to everyone for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. And we're looking forward to bringing some incredible information to each and every one of you week in and week out on this and on our other new podcast that we've launched as well. Very exciting for this week. Um, but yeah, I think that's everything from my side. Laura, anything that you'd like to share as we sign off?
Yeah, just know that you can create a life of abundance and just believe in it, even if you don't see it right away. Know it. Just find a way to know it, and the rest will unfold.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Well, then, until next time, everyone, we've been Laura and Stefan, and we're looking forward to seeing you again soon. Bye now.
Bye.